Today's lesson will be about how to install Blender and the basics of Blender and making a simple model to begin with. So to begin with, we're going to look at how to install Blender. So in our digital classroom, I'll have posted a link to this website. Now Blender is a free software. So if you're on a Windows computer, you'll just click on download Blender 2.8a. If you're on a different type of computer like a Mac, you just need to select the correct format for you down here. Now, once you click on it, it'll start a download in the bottom left hand corner. And when that download's finished, you double click on the downloaded file and it'll start the install. Now, once it's installed, Blender, when it opens up, looks something like this. Now, just like any of our other software applications we've used, the first thing you need to do is pick a file type. So we're going to start with a general file type. Now, this is the default boot up of what Blender looks like, and there are quite a few buttons and layers where you can see lots of information. But we're only going to start with two different modes today. So on the left hand side here is where you have some general tools for movement, and these control what your mouse does. So at the moment you can see I've got the select box, which allows me to select items just by left clicking. The next box down creates a cursor, which allows me to move like a perspective point. Next one down is a move tool. So when I have the move tool selected and I have an object selected, you'll see it brings up an X, Y, and Z axis buttons. Now that allows me, if I click on one of those arrows exactly, to move the object just in that path. So just in the X path, just in the Y path, just in the Z path. If I wanted to free move an object, I can just grab it anywhere else and move it around. The next one down are the rotate. So again, you can rotate on the X, about the Y, sorry, about the X, or about the Z. And you can see when you're directly on a plane, it shows you that it's a specific color of that plane. We also have the scale. So scale, when I select it, allows me to either just drag out a corner and make it bigger, or if I drag an individual color, it adjusts it just in one plane. Now, undo steps, it's the same as most software. Control Z will take you back a step. You'll also notice up the top here, for moving around an object, if you have a middle mouse button, you can scroll in and out quite easily. If you click on it, you can move around the object. If you don't, you can also use rotate up this top right hand corner. That lets you move around. To move the screen, if I hold Shift and click the middle button, it allows me to pan left and right, up and down. If you don't have a middle mouse button, you can use this one up here, move the view, and you just click and hold on it with the left mouse click, and you can move the object. Now, by default, in Blender, when it boots up, it will have a camera, a light, and an object. That's just the cube. Now you'll see over here on this menu on the right hand layer, you can see these objects are named that, and you can change their names, but for the time being we'll keep them there. Up the top here we have the different modes that work in Blender. So currently we're in layout, so as to go to modeling, it will change what my workspace looks like. We go to sculpting, again it changes my workspace, just like when we used Photoshop and we had quite a few different ones. Today we're going to stick with layout and modeling. So, to begin with, top left here, you can see at the moment it says object mode. I want to go into edit mode. What edit mode allows me to do is it changes all my tools here, so I get quite a few more. it also allows me to select the object differently, so I don't select it as a whole. And you'll notice a change right here. So at the moment, this first one is select by vertices. So vertexes are the corners on the object. So you can see I selected an individual vertex. If I went to the move tool now, I can now just move that one corner. The next selection option is edge select. This allows me to select an edge. So now it just modifies one edge. This one is face select. So when I do that, it lets me select one face. Now again, I can move it freely, I can rotate it, I can do different things. If I was to rotate just that face, you'll see I can curve my object. Now, if I wanted to select more than one face, or more than one edge, or more than one vertex, you hold Shift while selecting, and it will select more objects. And it's rotating around to make sure I grab everything. If you only have one object there, you can also press A, and it selects everything in the mode that you're in. So if I'm in edge mode, it selects all edges. If I'm in vertex mode, it selects all vertices. What we're going to start with today is modeling your name. So to model your name, we're going to start with just a cube. So the cube that's in the space here. Now, say you didn't have the cube here. To add a cube in, all I would do is go add cube. Now that adds a cube straight in for me. It's a default size. And now we're going to start by modeling our surname. So what I mean by that is we're going to make each letter a 3D model. And this is where size is kind of up to you. So I'm going to start with the face select. And I'm going to click on the top face. So I'm going to do my surname. So I could do this using the tools here. So extrude region. And if I click on that and just click and drag on that, it lets me pull up. I could also just press the E key and move my mouse, and that lets me pull my object up. So I'm starting to make my P, just like that. Now once I've got it as tall as I want it, I'm now going to change which face I have selected. So I'm going to click, press E, I'm going to pull it out a bit. Now say I wanted to curve my P, this is where I'm going to change it a bit. So now I'm going to start to modify it. So if I change to edge select, I'm just going to change this to the move tool or select tool. Edge select, and I'm just going to click off so nothing is selected, and then I'm going to click this bottom edge. And what I'm going to do is with the move tool, just start to angle it by picking different edges and start to curve it. I'm going to go back to my face select, click this face, press extrude, and you'll see it'll pull it down a bit. Now again, edge select, I'm going to curve it, just like this. I'm going to come back around, grab my face select again, again proceed to curve that edge around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it eventually join up with here. So I'm going to get a face select, click on this one, and press E and drag it out roughly to where I think they're going to meet, which is pretty close. Now I'm just going to grab the face select here, press E, drag it down into that object. You can see I've now made the letter P. Alright, now with this object, I could go back and edit individual things. So you might notice as you're making your shape that, let's say for example, something gets a bit bent out of shape, like you've maybe curved the letter and it's warped a bit like this. What you can then do is go back and get like your edge select tool, click on the different edges and modify it one at a time to make it perfectly square. So it looks something like this. Now you're going to repeat this process doing each letter. So that was my first one, P. To add in a new letter, I'm going to go add, cube, and then I'm just going to use the move tool and move it to the side, and I'd start making the letter A. Now, once you've done all your letters, the last step you're going to do is add a plane. Now, a plane is just a big object, and I want the plane to go underneath everything, and I'm going to use the scale tool to scale it out so that all my letters are going to fit onto this plane. So it might be quite big, and you might end up moving a whole letter. Now, say you wanted to do like a drag select. There are other selection tools. So say I just wanted to move the P, but not the A, or the potential A, I would go, there's an option for B. So B does like what's called a box select. If I drag a box around, it selects everything that's in the box. But because it's a 3D model, it doesn't necessarily select everything on the other side. So I need to hold Shift, B, and drag Shift and B, hold Shift, and select that side as well. Okay. Now, you can, at the moment my model is showing hard surfaces, but if I click on this show X-ray button, I can actually see through my model and see a bit more of it. So I can see I've got a face here that I haven't selected. So I'm just going to change to that one and select it as well. So if I wanted to move that, I now press move and it will move my whole object as one. Now, what we're going to look at now is adding some color to our scene. So at the moment, by default, these objects are just a shade of grey. To add color, I need to go back to object mode. So I click up where it says edit mode, go to object, and you'll see it now selects all these objects as one thing. Now, if I want my objects to be a different color, this could be a bit of a problem. Because at the moment, if I apply a color, I'm going to show you how you do that. So I'm going to click on my object, and on this right hand side, I'm going to click on the materials button, context material. And it has a default material on it, which is a grey. It's just a plain grey. So if I click on the preview, you'll see that's what it looks like. It's like a white grey. What I'm going to do is change the base color. So if I click on the base color where it's white and go, I'm just going to make mine blue. Now you might go, oh, the colors haven't changed. That's because we're only viewing this in a mode which isn't showing color. So if I go up the top here, and you'll see there's a wireframe, there's this shading, there's materials, so that just shows material color. So you can see it went blue, and then there's the rendered view. So the render is what it looks like with lights in there, and you can see I've got one light in there, so anything that's under the light is bright, but anything that's not under the light is dark. Now what I'm going to do is I want to separate these objects so I don't have the same color on everything. So how do I do that? I go back into edit mode, and I'm going to select, let's go the plane first because I want the plane to be a different color. And I'm going to press P on my keyboard. P brings up a separate option. So I'm going to separate by my selection. So if I go by that, that will now mean if I go back into object mode, the P, so the plane, is separate to my letter P. And you can see that because up here in the window, I've now got cube 1, 001, and the other object is cube, and it highlights when it's selected. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go down to my materials. Now it's got a blue material on this object, so I'm going to click on that material that says blue and minus it. You can see it removed it straight away. I'm going to change that to just a white. So I just put a new material on and it's white. You can see it changed the base straight away. Now you might pick a different color, that's up to you. You might want different letters to be different colors. So if I go back into object mode, into edit mode, sorry, and use my face select, and I'm going to select this time this little cube. Now you'll need to make sure when you go into edit mode that it only goes into edit for the object you have selected. So I need to make sure I have this cube selected. Change to edit mode, and now I can select it, and I can't select the plane. So I'm going to select this cube using my face select. Press on P, separate by selection, and you'll notice that's changed it up here. When I go back into object mode, I can now select that by itself. I'm going to minus the material on the cube, make a new one, and let's say I made this green. So you can see they're now two different colors. Once you get to this stage, we'll look at rendering. Now rendering is the process of creating like a picture from this. Now if I'm just in the rendering takes into account things like light, and we're going to use the camera to do this. So at the moment, this is my camera. If I go up to view and go active camera, or if you have a numpad on your keyboard, you can press numpad 0. That's what I can currently see through the camera. So I'm going to move my camera. I'm just going to zoom out, or let's go view, viewpoint from the front. There you go. And I'm going to move my camera. So just like we moved objects before, I can move it. So I'm going to move my camera back a fair way. Then I'm going to rotate my camera. And I might do this while I'm actually looking at the camera. So I'm going to use the rotate tool. And I'm just going to rotate. So you can see I still can't see stuff. So I might do it outside my camera actually. I'm going to get the rotate tool. And just on the blue axis. So I think that should be looking more at my objects. So if I go view, camera, active, getting closer. I might need to come further back. Almost there. Just so I can see my model. So this is what I'd actually see through the model. So say I got to this point and I was happy with how it looked. What I'm going to do is from this camera mode, so make sure I go view, active camera. So it looks like this. I'm going to click on rendering. Now what rendering is going to do, so I'm going to click on render and render image. Now what it then does is renders an image of what it can see on the screen with all the lighting and shadows and things like that. Now it pops up in an external window, but you might be like, oh, it's too dark. I want it a bit brighter. So what we can do is add some more lights, and I can also move my light. So say I wanted the P to be a bit more well lit, I can move my light. So it can be in front, it can be behind. I can also add more lights. So if I go view up to add and light, and I'm going to add another point. See, I can add a second light in. and based on how close it is to something, depends on how well lit it'll be. I can also up the intensity of the light. So at the moment it was on 10 watts, but the brighter I make it, the more light that object will put out. I can also change the color of the light. So you can see that one was at 1000 watts and this one was only at 93. So if I change that to 1000, that'll become a lot brighter. I can also change the color that the light makes. So now if I go back to view camera and my active camera, you can see I've got different colors happening there. So once you've got all your letters and colors applied to your letter, materials applied to each letter and lighting done, what you're going to do is go render your image. Once it pops up this image here, you're going to save the image. So you're going to go image, save, and this is where Blender can be a bit annoying, because to find your drives on your computer, you need to go volumes, and you'll be able to find your drive under there if you don't have a shortcut that pops up. So I'm going to put it in our file. I'm going to call this tutorial. Actually, I'm going to call this tutorial 1 name. It goes save as image. Now what that's doing is saving an individual image. It's not actually saving my Blender file. So now I'm going to save the Blender file as well. I go File, Save, and you can see that it's got the image file there. And I'm going to call this tutorial 1 name as well. And there'll be two different things. So this saves a Blender file. Once you've done that, on your computer, you should be able to see if you go to your where you saved it to, that you now have a picture file. So this is my individual picture. And you have the application file, so the software file. When I ask you to turn in progress to show me where you're up to, I'll want you to send me the individual picture file. So that'll be the one which is a PNG. And that concludes the lesson for this first one.